Freeway Ricky Ross.
What's up?
Is it Freeway Ricky Ross, Freeway Rick, Freeway Ricky? What do you usually go?
And I got about 30. When they had me my indictment, they went down the list of names, my aliases, because different people change it, and so I don't care. Just call me.
Okay, I'll call you Freeway.
That's cool.
All right, so Freeway, where did you grow up exactly?
I grew up in South Central LA, right off of the 110 freeway, which is where I got my nickname from.
Right by the freeway.
87th in Figueroa.
Okay. Now, if you were to describe the conditions that you grew up in terms of your family life and so forth, how would you describe it?
Well, I grew up without my father.
Okay. What happened to your dad?
My mom and my dad broke up when I was 4 months old.
Oh, okay.
So basically, my father was the streets, the big homies, guys like Tookie Williams, Raymond Washington, Cartoon, guys like that there.
Okay. So when you were growing up, as a kid, during elementary school, junior high and so forth, were you involved in any sort of criminal activities? Were you essentially a good kid?
I think I started doing my first petty crime maybe around the 6th grade.
Okay, what was that?
I had some friends that had been going to thrifties and they had found out how to get watches out of the cabinet. And I went with them and they got me a watch.
Okay.
It was my first crime.
Your first crime. Did you get caught?
No, we got away, but my mom found the watch. So I didn't get caught by the store, but I got caught. I got a whooping for it.
Okay.
My mom is really, really religious. I mean,
So she just bugged out.
Yeah. Man, I mean.
You couldn't explain where the watch came from, obviously.
I couldn't.
Yeah. So you did a petty crime then. After that, did you continue with more petty crimes?
No, I wanted to be a Crip then.
You wanted to be a Crip?
Yeah, I wanted to be a Crip, but my mom, my mom was still strict. And my mom didn't whoop me with switches. She used a telephone cord, which today would be child abuse. Yeah. If they knew it. My mom would whoop you, you have whips on your butt.
Okay.
I couldn't join the Crips at that time. But just so happened, before I was old enough to start bucking my mom's rule, I started playing tennis.
Okay.
I fell in love with the game of tennis, and that took me out of South Central LA.
Okay. Now, at the time that you said you wanted to be a Crip, you had mentioned Tookie Williams. Was he already?
Yeah.
He was already part of the, was he?
The Crips was already going.
Was already going?
Yeah, they were already going.
They were already going. And were they trying to recruit you, or were you trying?
No.
They nothing like that. They were good.
I wanted to be a part of what I saw,
Okay.
I saw the togetherness, the organization, and their reputation wasn't as bad as it is right now. Okay. This was before all the murders.
Before the drugs.
Yeah, before drugs. So it was mostly just hanging out, maybe some fist fights, some football games, neighborhood football games, stuff like that there. But I like the togetherness, the camaraderie, the women, and so forth.
So you got into the whole tennis thing.
Yeah. But
you weren't actually able to use tennis to get yourself out of your current situation.
Well, I did in a lot of ways, I mean, if you look at a couple of the guys that I hung with in junior high school who didn't play tennis, 2 of them have life sentences in the state, for murder, robbery, type of crime. And these were the guys that I hung out with whenever I could. So tennis did get me out. It didn't get me out the way I was hoping it would have, with the big mansion in Beverly Hills and, the Wimbledon Championship. It didn't get me out that way, but it did protect me in other ways that, because whenever I do something, I'll be all in.
Right.
I don't go halfway, I'm like, if this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. Sure. I ain't gonna do it a little bit, I'm gonna do it a lot. And then when I look back, my brothers and sisters gangbang. So the only thing that I know that kept me from that could only be tennis.
Okay. At one point in high school, you met a teacher that was involved in drugs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Mr. Fisher. We played tennis together and we hung out together. I mean, he was really cool. And when I first got introduced to cocaine, I'd stopped hanging out with him, stopped calling him, and so forth. And then when I did go back around after a few months, he was like, "Where you been?" And I had enough love and admiration for him to be honest with him. And I told him that I got involved with cocaine.
Now, when you got involved in cocaine, in what way?
I started selling.
Okay. Were you using it all?
At that time, I never used. I never used it.
What kept you from using it, being around it?
Well, like I said, I was a tennis player.
Okay.
I was an athlete. And, athletes are not supposed to use drugs. They're supposed to run, exercise, and be as fit as they can be.
Okay.
Well, that was my mentality. Even when I started selling drugs, I still wanted to be fit, because when I first started selling drugs, it wasn't going to be a career.
Just a side hustle.
Well, a quick fix,
Yeah.
Fix my car, give me some tennis lessons, give me some new rackets, pay for a few lessons. My life is right. Now I'm back to my tennis.
So how did you actually get involved in selling drugs initially? I mean, in terms of like, what was the actual situation around it?
Like I said in the book, you didn't get to read the book yet, but one of my big homies, who was kind of like a tookie in the neighborhood, big, muscular football player, tough, was playing football at San Jose State. He called me. I was down on my luck. I didn't know where I was going to get my next 50 cents from. And he was like, "Man, what you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, man, I'm just sitting here and on Mom's porch." And he was like, "Man, I got the next best thing. I got the thing that everybody's doing. Come by the house." So when I go by his house, he laid some cocaine out on the table.
Powder cocaine.
Powder cocaine in little rocks, though, like they had broke it off of an actual kilo.
This was not cooked cocaine. This was actually,
right.
It was just literally the cocaine
Yeah.
broken off from the packed
Correct.
cocaine. Okay.
Not sifted and cut up.
Okay. So when you saw it, what happened next?
Well, I didn't know if it was cocaine or not, because it was yellow. And I'm thinking cocaine was white. In the movie Superfly, the cocaine was white, not yellow. So this cocaine was yellow. So now I'm kind of like taken back, because, Superfly, that's my hero. I know he know what he doing. So now Mike, I don't know. Mike, you a football player. You don't know nothing about no cocaine. So Mike convinced me into taking a little piece and going around and showing it to some people. And that's pretty much what I did.
He fronted you the cocaine?
Yeah, $50 worth.
$50 worth. And he said, bring back the $50. And
yeah, I was supposed to bring back the 50.
Whatever you keep after that's your money.
Exactly. Well, I didn't know all that.
He gave you $50 worth of powdered cocaine. And what'd you do with it?
Well, I started going around the neighborhood asking people, what was it? All the OGs. I went to the liquor store where Bonnie hung out at, and Black, and all the guys who I felt were more advanced in the street than I was. I went and asked them. Well, eventually I run into Martin, who was a pimp, and Martin looked at it and he said, "Come on, go with me. We're gonna go find out what it is." So Martin takes me over to his house and pulls out his little back bag and takes out his little torch, and he goes to heating this bottle. He puts some stuff in the bottle and he's heating it up, and the stuff is bubbling and gelling, and he takes it over to the sink, puts some cold water in it. Booyah, he got a rock.
Oh, so he actually made crack right there in front of you?
He did.
Okay.
That was the first time I ever saw crack.
Okay.
What they call crack, we don't call it crack. We call it Ready Rock.
Ready Rock.
Yeah, we never called it crack. That's a government term. That
So,
was the term the government used so they could hammer everybody.
okay, so he went and made some Ready Rock in front of you.
Yeah. And then after that, he hit it and tasted it, and he was like, do they little number. I need another piece. Then he hit another piece. And then after a while, it was like, "Man, that's all you got left. You can't sell that. Give me all that. I owe you $50.
Did he actually pay you back the $50?
Nope, but he brought other people to me.
Oh, so he knocked you for the 50, but he brought some new customers over.
He brought me some new customers. He brought me my first $100 sale.
So you had to go back.
No, I didn't go back to Mike right then. I went back to the porch. I went back to the porch.
Because you owe Mike $50.
Oh, Mike, now I'm worse off than I was.
Right, you're $50 in the hole.
At least I wasn't 50 in the hole. Now I'm 50 in the hole. So I'm sitting on the porch going like, wow. But then I look up. Here come Martin. Then he got this dude with him. This big old dude is Mouse, Big Mouse, who's a Crip, and then they had $100, and he was like, man, I want $100 of that. Martin told me about it, and I was like, wow, what am I gonna do?
Because you have no more cocaine.
I don't have no cocaine, and I owe Mike 50. So how do I deal with that? Well, I called Mike. I told Mike what happened. I told him they had 100, and if he would bring the 100 over right then, he could get $100. So he did it, and that started my business. That's how my whole business started, with those two guys.
Martin and Mouse.
Yeah.
Martin and Mouse started you in the cocaine business. Okay.
I mean, they didn't start me, but they were my first two customers.
So basically, Mike came over, brought some more cocaine, sold it right then and there. You got your $100. What happened next?
Mike got his 100. Mouse kept coming, Martin kept coming, and I kept calling Mike. Next thing you know, I'm doing $300 a day for Mike. I'm like, wow, Mike's rolling. I ain't getting nothing out of this. I'm just a little homie looking out for the big homie.
Right. How old were you at the time?
I'm 19.
19, okay.
So then my boy Al, who was my number one dude, was in prison. I'm not in prison, but in the county jail for burglary. So he got released. So then I tell him what I've been doing. Like, man, I've been selling this cocaine and da-da-da-da, and I ain't getting nothing out of it. But I heard we can get an 8-track for $300. If you buy an 8-track for $3, you can make $900. So then we decided that we had to go get $300.
Okay.
That's what we did. That's what we did. We went and got 300.
You went and got 300.
Yeah.
And then
I talk about that whole story in there, how when we needed the 300, it's all in the book, about how we went and stole a car from our junior high school.
Then you flipped it for 300.
We flipped the parts for 300.
Oh, you stripped it.
We stripped it.
You stripped it out.
Well, Al did. Al stripped it because I couldn't really do much because I'd already got caught for GTA. So Al did all the work and we put the $300 together, bam. And then look back after that, baby. It was like.
Okay. So once you got the 300, you bought what with it?
We bought what they call an 8-track.
And what's an 8-track?
It's supposed to be 3.5 grams, but what I can tell you now is that it probably was a gram of cocaine and about 2.5 grams of cut.
It's like baby powder or whatever.
Yeah, they used to use McKnight on it.
Okay.
McKnight was a cut of choice when we were doing our thing.
Okay. So you went and got this fake 8-track and you flipped that.
Yeah. We were supposed to flip it in the 900. We probably came back with like $450, a little money, but enough to get another one. We did the same thing, and just kept doing the same thing. The next thing you know, we had 700, and then we buying a quarter. So then that's when I go back and I holler at Mr. Fisher. So he's like, man, what you been doing? So I tell him. So we buying about $1,100. We got about $1,100 saved up right now. And I said, man, I've been buying cocaine. And then he was like, man, come by my house. So when I get over to his house, he explains to me that all the stuff that he had didn't come from being a teacher. That he had sold cocaine. He had made 200. I think he said $250,000 before. He's like, I had $250,000. I traveled the world. And I was like, $250,000? What is that?
Yeah.
So he hooked me up with my first Nicaraguan connection.
So he actually gave you a connect.
He gave me the Nicaraguan connection. Yes.
The Nicaraguan connection.
That was my first Nicaraguan connection.
He hooked you up with someone from Nicaragua
that was in their circle.
That was in the circle that could move, that could get you weight.
Yeah. They could get me better quality better quality cocaine, better price, and weight.
Okay. And were you still working through the teacher, or were you going directly
For a
to
while, we worked through the teacher, but Mr. Fisher was using,
Oh, so you were sniffing coke. Were you doing crack?
sniffing and smoking.
Sniffing and smoking.
Yeah.
So you
It
couldn't
started
keep
off
working
where
with
he would, every time we would get something, he would take out a couple grams, you know. Oh, just give me a couple grams for my time. And then, you know, the more he took out, the more he smoked, the worse it starts to get. So, you know, now we're buying 8 ounces. So, you know, now he's taking out a ½ ounce. So he's really partying. You know, he got a house full of people, and now we don't go to school no more. I mean, I don't teach at school no more. I don't have to go to teach because I got cocaine. So, you know, it got to the point to where all he did all day long was just cocaine. And then the Nicaraguans, they saw it, we saw it, that he had started to become like
addict.
an addict, but disruptive to the business.
Okay.
You know, he wants more every time. He don't want to work until he wants to work. If he's hitting the pipe, you know, you can't do no business. So we both agreed that we would cut him out and start going directly to each other.
Were you using it all?
Mm-mm.
No. So you weren't touching the stuff.
No. I used for about 2 weeks, maybe, a week and a half. When I got up to an ounce, I thought I was rich. My friends who were using had convinced me that I was rich enough to have a party, a cocaine party,
Okay.
and marijuana party. I never smoked marijuana before. You know, I never drank a beer, never smoked a cigarette, any of that. So I did it for about a week straight, and at the end of the week, not only was my throat stripped, but my wallet was broke.
Right.
And I made a vow that I would never do it again.
Okay. So at this point, you're now working with the Nicaraguans.
Yes.
So how much weight are you buying at this time?
Like I said, when I started with buying through him, it started at like a ½ ounce. And, you know, at any given time, you know, 8 ounces, a pound, 2 pounds, 10 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, until I learned about kilos. And then I started buying kilos. So they was tricking me.
Okay. So you started buying kilos with the Nicaraguans.
Yeah. Eventually I started buying kilos.
How are you getting the drugs? You basically just meet up with them, do the transfer?
Yeah, we just go to an apartment somewhere, or we swap keys. Here are the keys to the car with the money. Here's the keys to the car. Because we know each other. You know, we've been doing this. We done made money with each other.
What I do know about the cocaine business, from my experience being around people and so forth, is that it's a very dirty business. It's if someone could.
It can be. It's according to who you're doing business with.
Right.
If you're doing business with a dirty dude, it's a dirty business.
Right. But people get ripped off in cocaine all the time. It seems like, you know, you compare it to like.
Well, if they doing business with ripoffs,
Okay.
You know, a guy who's not a ripoff ain't gonna rip you off.
Okay.
He don't care what it is, what product it is. He's just not a ripoff guy.
I see what you're saying.
But if you're dealing with a ripoff guy, he don't care if you're dealing with tennis shoes or bottles or sodas. He's a ripoff guy. He's not there to sell a product. He's there to rip you off. And that's the way the cocaine business works as well.
So when you deal with people who are just business people, you always get what it is that you paid for.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Or more.
Or more. Okay. So you got lucky enough to deal with actual business people.
Absolutely. I mean, I had some rip-off people. I done got ripped off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was the most you got ripped off with, you know, back then?
Well, cocaine. I had a guy one time to sell me $70,000 worth of a cake mix.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You didn't realize it until.
Well, the way the deal went down was I had stepped outside of my circle of buying drugs, and even though this guy was one of the Nicaraguans, what I had a bad habit of doing is I would take the numbers from other Nicaraguans. They would come to the meeting, and then what they would do is they would throw me their phone number, because I kind of like become like the prize catch for the Nicaraguan connection. They all was trying to meet me.
Right, because they knew that you were the person in LA for them to unload their product.
Exactly.
Okay, and they didn't trust anyone else.
Well, you might run into one of those ripoff guys.
Right. They knew that Freeway Ricky
Or
was...
somebody who was a murderer. A murderer, they not only will they take your drugs, but they gonna kill you too.
Right.
So they felt comfortable with me.
You were just about your business.
I was about my business. I was gonna have money.
Okay.
And I had plenty of it,
Yeah. So what happened to the guy who sold you the cake mix?
I never saw him again. We come into this guy's business, the guy who set it up, and I'm sitting at a table with a bag of money, and he's standing in the door, and he was playing like he was scared. So he tell the guy who set the deal up, "Where's the money?" And then I tell him, kind of like Scarface.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
And then I tell him, "Where's the drugs?" So he shows me his bag. Drugs right here. I said, "Money right here." So I got my guys sitting out in on the street in cars, watching, supposedly watching. So the guy who set the deal up, he said, "Oh man, come on!" And he picked my money up off the table and walked it over to the guy and handed it to him. And then he got the bag from that guy. Well, immediately after the guy got the bag, he took off running. So by the time he got to me, I opened the bag up and I look at it. I said, "This ain't no dope." I take off after him. So he got a car outside running. He jumps in the car, and now we got a high-speed chase. We're going through L.A. We chasing him.
He was chasing for 70,000.
Yeah, 70,000 was a lot of money back then, man. At that time, I probably was only up to I maybe only had like 200,000, so that was like half my stash you just took.
Right.
Even though I'm making money daily, it still was a hard pill for me to swallow.
Of course. I mean, 70,000, no one wants to take that loss, no matter how much money they got.
Yeah, especially in the 70s.
So you never caught the guy?
No, I never caught him.
You never saw him again?
No.
And the guy who set up the deal?
Well, when I got back, my guys had beat him pretty bad. Almost killed him. When I walked in, I stopped it immediately. Because I didn't think he had anything to do with it. I knew where he stayed and knew his wife, and I'm like, guy wouldn't put himself in that kind of situation. So the guy thanked me and took us to where the other guy stayed and tried to help us find him. At the end of the day, I let Tony go home.
Okay. And you never got the money back?
No, and then the other Nicaraguans heard about it, and they teased me about it for going around them. You try to go around us. Look what happened to you.
Okay, so you went right back to your go-to Nicaraguans.
Yeah.
Okay. By the time you met Blandon, how big were you getting? Like, how much were you buying on a regular basis?
I don't know, maybe a couple pounds, 16 pounds maybe.
16 pounds.
Yeah, 8 pounds, something like that. At that time, pounds were going for 35,000 a pound. Yeah. Yeah, so I was spending a nice little piece of money.
Okay. Now, how by the time you met Blandon, how much cash did you have?
I don't know. I had a few hundred thousand.
Few hundred thousand. So you weren't a millionaire back then, but you were well off.
I was doing good.
You was doing good.
I was doing pretty good.
So how did the whole Blandon thing come together?
Well, see, we were still getting from the Blandon, but we wasn't going directly to Blandon.
It was a middleman.
It was a middleman. So the only thing happened when we met him personally was that the middleman had got cut out, which dropped the price even more. But we were already getting it from Blandon, technically.
Technically.
Yeah.
You just weren't talking to him.
I just wasn't talking to him.
Okay. So how did you end up meeting him?
I bought him.
You bought him?
Mm-hmm.
So you basically bought your connect.
Yeah.
So you told your middleman, I'm going to give you
$60,000.
$60,000, and you introduced me to your connect, and you can walk away with that $60,000.
Yep. And then Blandon paid $60,000 as well.
To meet you.
Yeah, to meet me.
So the connect got $120,000 to essentially walk away from that part of the business.
Yeah.
Okay. see
He
how
had
that,
got spooked, I heard. You know, somebody had got busted.
he was trying to get out of the game.
He was trying to get out of the game, so he felt, you know, he'd take 160,000, go back to Honduras, and live like a king.
120,000.
120,000.
And that's what he did. He left.
I guess, yeah, for a while.
Okay. So now you're working with the Connect, Blandone.
Yep.
How is that relationship different than your previous relationship?
We got a lot tighter. You know, me and Blandone hung out a little bit together. You know, I would go over his house. The other guys were more meet on the street, switch cash for money, you know, money for drugs, and it's over. But me and Blandone, we kind of hung out. We talked about business. So we developed kind of what I thought was a friendship as well.
Okay. Now, Blandone is the one that actually took you to the next level.
Technically, yeah, and no, you know.
Explain.
I mean, we took each other to the next level.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You know, I wasn't out here helpless and homeless. You know, when I met him, I had a few $100,000 and I had clientele. I knew the streets. You know, I knew all the shot callers from every hood in LA. You know, so he helped, but you know, not by himself.
According to some articles that I looked up, and you could tell me whether this is accurate or not. It said that you were making up to $3 million a day.
I've had days that I made $3 million.
You had a $3 million day.
Yeah.
Okay.
A few of them.
A few of them. Explain how you have a $3 million day.
Well, your big customers come through, a couple of them, and they drop off $200,000, $300,000. There were 3 or 4 spots that I had in LA where guys that stood out on the street that would make $100,000 a day, each one.
Each one.
Yeah.
Now this actually built up. I guess you had operations in 42 cities?
I don't know how many cities. I mean,
a lot of cities.
We had a lot of cities.
All throughout the country.
Yeah.
So explain to me, and okay.
You know, different people do their estimates and their calculations and all that stuff. So,
and I guess the other thing is that you moved $900 million worth of cocaine.
Or more.
Or more. Which in today's dollars is the equivalent of $2.5 billion.
Yeah.
So you were moving.
You figure like this here. If you do 100 kilos in one day, that cocaine goes a lot of places. You know, a lot of people, they taking it, they putting it on airplanes, you know, they moving it around. Now you're talking about you move 200 kilos in one day. Or 2.5, 250. You're talking about that's a lot of cocaine.
Okay. If you were to stack up 250 kilos right now, how big would it be? Would it cover this entire room?
No. 250 kilos is not that big. Maybe the size of that couch.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the equivalent of $3 million.
According to what price you're getting.
Yeah.
What time it is, you know, one time I paid as much as $48,000 for a kilo. So, $3 million won't go for it when you're buying them like that.
Right.
But if you're getting them for 10 a kilo, you can buy 300.
Okay.
So all that factors in, you know. And like I said, I paid as much as, I paid $3,300 for an ounce of cocaine. If you add that up, you're talking about like $100,000 for 1 kilo. But for the whole kilo, I paid $48,000 cash for one. And I've also bought them for $9.5.
Right.
As low as $9.5.
So how were you actually getting this much cocaine on a regular basis? Were you getting it once a week, every day?
100 keys every day.
You were getting 100 kilos every day?
My last 2 years, yeah, every day.
Every single day?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you say how you were actually getting it?
In the trunk of cars.
So Blandone would basically
You'd have a driver to pull up wherever I wanted it dropped off, and they pull it there and leave the keys under the floor mat. My guys would get in it and take it to where I wanted it.
Okay. How big was your actual crew in terms of people that answer directly to you? Obviously, when you're talking about hundreds of kilos, it's going all over the world, and there's all types of people.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, if you see the special they did on CBS called LA Gang Godfathers, I think they had me surrounded by about 25 guys,
Okay.
30 guys who were like they call lieutenants.
Okay.
But it varied from time to time. You know, guys quit, get fired. You know,
Get busted.
get busted, which was rare.
Why was it rare?
No, I taught my guys how to sell and how to avoid the law.
Okay.
So they were pretty good at avoiding the law.
How did you really manage a crew like this? Because when you talk about money, this much money, you're talking about drugs, you're talking about women, you're talking about violence, you're talking about gangs, and then you're also talking about law enforcement. How do you really manage a crew of this many people and keep it from just falling apart in an afternoon, which happens all the time?
The first thing you got to do, you have to really be humble in yourself and always look at situations from the other person's point of view. That's one of the things that I do. I always try to see your point of view first, because I know to you, the most important thing is your point of view. You don't care about my point of view, but your point of view is always important. So I usually go with your point of view, and most of the time is, how can I get food, shelter, and clothes?
Okay.
Those are motivating, really, really high motivating factors. So if you can provide those to most people, they'll give you their attention. I mean, you're going to run into some, though. That's, you know, you can give them that, and they still going to be, what did we call it earlier? We were talking about it earlier. I forgot what it was. We were talking about shady or something like that.
Yeah.
Or shiesty or something we called it. So no matter what you do, you still can run into those type of people. But, you know, you just be able to roll past it.
Okay. So you had 25 people, roughly, allegedly, moving up to $3 million a day in product.
Some days.
On some days.
And there'll be days where there's 2 million.
Yeah.
1.5 million.
Okay.
1 million too.
I talked to a few people that know you and know of you and so forth. And the one thing that they said that I found very interesting, because I grew up in the 80s and 90s in the Bay Area, and you could point out the drug dealer, you know, from across the street. Like, okay, that guy right there in the troop jacket, you know, with the big chain on, with the rims on his car, that guy's selling cocaine.
I know where you're going.
Right. People were telling me that they knew the name Freeway Rick, but you would walk right past them and they wouldn't even know that was you. People actually thought that you were one of the smokers.
I got a story that I tell everybody when I went to the county jail for the first time, and I'm in the holding tank with these guys. And they're in the holding tank having a conversation about me. One of the guys is telling them that he's my cousin, that he's been to my house, and I had a mountain of cocaine on the table, and we were all snorting, and that I was coming to get him out of jail.
You're listening to this.
I'm sitting there listening to it.
And do you even know the guy?
Never seen him before in my life.
Okay.
But that happened to me all the time. And I didn't want to be the drug dealer that you could point out. You know, I didn't want to be him, the guy who stood out from everybody. And I found out that, too, when you stand out over your workers and you shine over your workers, it causes some resentment. You know, my workers didn't really resent me because we could go places and people might have thought I was their worker. You know, I can remember the first time I went to the skating ring, you know, to pick up on some chicks. And my guy who I go with, he got on the rings and the gold and the jacket, you know, the Raiders jacket and the hat, and all the girls all over him. you know, and I can't even pick up a chick. You know,
Right.
They don't give me the time of day. And you know, finally one girl came up and she was like, she knew me from another one of my guys, and she was like, "You Rick, they tripping. He worked for you."
So
Wow.
was it a disguise, you think?
It actually became a disguise, but it wasn't purposely designed, you know, in the beginning to be a disguise. But it actually became a disguise, you know, where people would be caught off guard when they see me. You know, if I pulled up, you know, nobody would be saying, "Oh, there go Rick right there. Let's figure out what we're going to do." You know, it would be more like, "Who is that?" You know, and then by the time they figure out, I'm probably gone.
Huh. So you never wore jewelry?
No, I don't like jewelry.
Fancy cars?
I don't need fancy cars either. You know, my guys bought them to me.
Okay.
They introduced me to all my girls. Somebody would bring her to me and like, "Man, I got somebody for you to meet." You know,
So you never had to.
so I didn't have to go and
You
drive the
have to go impress
Ferraris and the gold chains. You know, I just go buy her something. Here, you go shopping. Go get you
Okay.
the gold change.
How much money were you sitting on at your height in terms of liquid?
The most I ever had cash was like 3.2 million cash.
Okay.
You know, and then all my property, you know, my property holdings, my cars, and things like that. I think the government was saying it was like my property was probably like $8 million worth of property,
Okay. So you had.
which I wish I had right now.
So you were sitting on over $10 million easily.
Yeah.
$15 million.
But the most valuable thing that I had was not the cash nor the property. It was the cash flow.
Cash flow.
Yeah. See, I had a cash flow of $200,000 a day profit.
Profit.
Yeah.
So what were you doing with the money?
Whatever I wanted.
So give me an example of how, you weren't spending money on being flashy. What were you spending
Well, you know,
money
like my little partner who with me now, he was with me when he was 14.
on? Okay.
Now, his job was when we ride down the street and people run up to me saying, "Oh, my house notice due, such and such is in jail and he needs some money." Well, he would give them the money. We put up in the gas station, everybody would pull up, want to fill their cars up, and then he would take care of that for me. So, you know, I would give away lots of money every day.
Really? How much would you give away in a day?
I don't know, maybe 20, 30, 40,000 some days.
You would give away up to $40,000 in a day.
Yeah, I gave away a lot of cocaine like that too.
Oh, you just give cocaine away?
Well, I found out, right, that I could build my clientele base like that. Say, for instance, I would take a key of cocaine and I would just give out ounces to people who coming up talking about they trying to get put down. I mean, every day, people would come up to me. Well, you know, it's like you in the music business. You know, how many times somebody come to you, "Oh man, I got a hit record."
Right.
So I would throw my ounce and say, "Prove it."
Boom. Here's an ounce.
I didn't even start with an ounce. I would give my story. I started with an 8-track. And it wasn't even a real 8-track. It was boo-boo.
Right.
But I took that and I came up off of it. So here you an ounce of the bomb. And the best price in town. Ain't nobody can give you a better price than this.
Right. And you would front it to them.
Give it to them.
That's yours.
You ain't even got to come back. It's up to you. Come back or don't come back.
What percentage of people actually came back?
2 or 3 out of 10.
Right, because they would smoke it, party with it.
Go sell it, and then go buy a car.
Yeah.
Or go buy some tennis shoes or gold change. But what I found out, though, is the 1 or 2 who did would pay for everything.
Right. Could cover the losses with all this.
They would cover my losses, you know. So, you know, and I got a couple really good kids like that. You know, a couple guys became millionaires out of that same program.
The crack, the cocaine is flooding into Los Angeles. And the crack, what they call the crack epidemic was in full swing. Were you responsible for crack in America in terms of...
Did I invent crack? No.
You didn't invent it, but from what I was told, it was like before Freeway Rick, everyone was pretty much just doing coke. And then
No,
Freeway Rick,
they were doing crack. We didn't call it crack. We called it freebase. They were
Freebase.
freebasing already. I used to pay people to cook mine for me. So they were already cooking. They taught me how to cook it. So no, I think what Jesse Katz said in the LA Times probably would be one of the most accurate things, that I was the biggest promoter of it at that time. I made the young guys want to become crack dealers, like Tookie made me want to be a Crip. Well, I made the young guys that came up under me want to be dope dealers.
Okay. Now, with the drug trade comes a lot of violence. So maybe not on your end, with the people you dealt with, but
some violence. It's some violence.
Well, but when you talk about the gang situation in LA, a lot of it is fueled over drug territories.
Who said that?
From what I've seen, from people I've talked to.
Who, the cops? I'm sure you talked to people that was from the streets, right?
Absolutely.
For the first time I ever saw a Crip and a Blood after they started fighting, that I saw them working together, was selling drugs.
Okay, but you have areas that a certain crew will sell drugs on, like this particular block. You know, this is Nutty Block, and the people who live here, and the people who are affiliated with this Crip gang are selling cocaine and crack on this block. It's not a free market. Like, some Bloods from another neighborhood can't set up shop across the street and say, hey, we got better prices, and everything's all good.
In some blocks, maybe, but I don't know if you can necessarily blame the drug for that. They already had that when they was just Cripping. You can't come over here.
Okay.
Whether you're selling drugs or not. You can't come over here and get our chicks. You can't come over here and wash your car. You can't come on this block.
It's our block.
So I don't think you can necessarily blame drugs for that issue. See,
but the drugs are the main form of income.
Well, they were doing it before the income.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So if there were blocks that nobody could come on before the drugs, then when drugs come and they say, oh, you can't come on this block, you can't say that was the drug.
Okay.
That was just the people, how they ran their block.
Okay.
And they did have blocks, and there are blocks like that. But what I'm saying is, most drug dealers don't want violence.
It's bad for business.
Bad for business. Most people who sell drugs on the block, they don't care if you a Crip or a Blood. When you come on that block to buy drugs, ain't nobody mess with you.
If you're buying.
Or if you're selling to them.
To them, yeah.
See, if it's a benefit in them, they'll figure out how to get around the gang stipulations. I guess that might be the correct word.
But you have these gangs, these large organizations who have leaders in place.
Right.
With large.
Some black gangs really don't have the leadership stuff like.
No.
Not like, I mean, I've been in the joint with them. I never been around Mexican gangs before, white gangs before. They have leaders. They have what they call shot callers.
But you're saying that the Crips and Bloods didn't have that.
They don't really go by those rules, They got a guy that may call the shots on 2 or 3 guys, they're following. But when you're talking about he's going to dictate to the whole hood, that ain't finna happen.
No.
Black gangs don't do it. If they did, they would be a lot more powerful than what they've been. I think one of the problems is lack of organization. They're not really organized like a lot of other gangs are.
You'd actually have to interact with the Crips and Bloods and stuff.
Absolutely.
In order to move some of your products.
Absolutely.
Was there ever situations where, for example, someone in a situation like that might look at a Freeway Rick and said, this guy's making a lot of money. I got a bunch of guys who have, who are willing to shoot people for me. I'm going to go ahead and either extort them or take over his operation or do something of that sort.
I never had that problem.
Never. And why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, it just never came up, I don't know. I can't answer that question, you know.
But you maintain good relationships.
Absolutely.
With
Absolutely.
everybody.
I knew most of the shot callers from every set, you know, from
Okay.
the Bloods, the Crips, the Nickersons, the Jordan Downs, the Jungle. I mean, you know,
All over LA.
all over LA.
Okay.
And my goal was, you know, to put them down, make sure that they get money.
Okay.
You know, you saw the documentary where my girl said, Rick want them all to have money.
Yeah.
So who wants to hurt somebody that want to make some money?
So they were protecting you in a way, like
Not really protecting me. I don't think, but yeah, in a sense protecting me because I got goodwill. If they talk good of you, which is how my name became the household name that it became, because of the people who were talking good of me. If you got a small guy, you know, who's selling drugs, and he mentioned your name, oh, such and such. Few people listen. But now you got a big guy. And then he has his little crew, 5 or 6 guys around. And this is how the police told me that I got busted, how my name got out. Well, he would mention it just to those guys because he know don't put it all out in the street. But by him saying it to those guys, and then when those guys go and say it to somebody else, then it starts to ripple effect because now these guys are the influential people in the community. And then, you know, I had a couple young guys, 18 years old, with Rolls Royces and Ferraris. You know, one of them had first Testarossa in LA, you know. The Jacksons had ordered him, I believe, and they couldn't get him out. And he walked up to the Ferrari dealer and said, hey, I want that. And they said, oh, that's Jermaine Jackson's car. He said, how much is it? And Jermaine ain't here, he's sitting in the thing. And he bought it, you know. So, and people knew that this kid was working with me.
Was that a worry for you? Because you're not flashy, you're very low key, but all these guys underneath you are buying Ferraris and, you know.
Well, they hid it from me. They hid it from me. And, you know, I didn't find out for months and, you know, they wouldn't let me see their cars. And, you know, I would hear about it through the grapevine. Oh, you know, such and such was in Vegas standing on the hood of a Rolls Royce at the fight. So, you know, they hid it from me. And I was worried about it because I knew that eventually the cops were going to start to say, you know, where these Mercedes-Benz is, where these Rolls is, Ferraris, Porsches, where are these cars coming from, how are these. I mean, you know, even with the crooked cops, you know, and they talked about it was hard for them to believe that it was that much money in South Central.
At what point did you say, I think I've gone over the top, and I think that at this point, going to jail is a very likely option for me?
Well, I always knew I was going to go to jail.
So coming into it, you knew you were going to jail?
Not coming into it, but after I started learning the business.
Okay.
You know, going to jail was just another part of being in the streets.
Okay.
What made me stop, though, was the hypocriteness in me. You know, I didn't want people selling to my family, but then I was selling to everybody's family.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of hypocritical. And that's why I eventually quit selling. Okay.
But by that time, there was already a case against you and surveillance and...
I didn't know that. But it was, yeah.
Okay.
It was secret indictments.
Secret indictments. And ultimately, you have certain people who have certain rules and certain values about them that will end up doing life in prison based on their principles. But most people, when facing 20, 30 years, and they say, hey, all you got to do is tell me where you got it from, and we'll turn that 30 years into 3.
Yeah, tell on a friend. That's what they call it. Why do 10 when you can tell on a friend?
Why do 10 if you can tell on a friend? Okay. And when did that start to happen?
I think when the feds put in the 85%.
85% of your time, the Fed jail guidelines?
Yeah, most of the
before
guys.
What, you'd get like 50% or something like that?
Well, you know, most of the guys in LA, in California would get state time. You know, you get caught with some cocaine, you know, you go in, you get 2 years, year and a half, you know, 6 months. But these are guys that was gang members, you know, who had been to prison for murder, robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, you know, so they had did some time before, you know, 6 years, 7 years. But with the 85%, flipped it. Because now if you had a prior conviction, well, instead of getting 10, you're going to get 20. Then if you had 2 convictions, instead of getting 20, you're going to get life. So it really changed the game, and it put people in a lot more pressure.
Okay. And that's when people started to turn against each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you eventually got caught.
Yep.
By people that worked for you?
One was my next door neighbor. Little dudes who grew up under me, you know, who I've been knowing all my life. Eventually testified. Okay.
And you got how many years initially?
On that case, I got 10 years. I made a deal for 10 years. The government had a tough case. They were gonna have a tough case. You know, I hadn't been selling drugs for a year and a half before they caught up with me. The indictments were secret indictments. The feds didn't catch me. Local cops caught me for the feds. So they had a tough case anyway. I was willing to go to trial. I wanted a deal, but I was willing to go to trial on that case.
How much money did you spend in legal fees at that point? Because you had, I assume, millions and millions.
On that case, my lawyer charged me like 180, I think, and then like 30 for an investigator.
So not well, I mean, a lot, but not, you didn't have to.
I didn't have to break the bank.
You didn't have to break the bank.
Yeah.
But I mean, but you're fighting, you know, this is the most important.
And then all my co-defendants, even the guys who testified against me, I hired all them lawyers as well.
So you paid for the lawyers of guys who testified against you?
Well, I knew that it would be better for me to hire a lawyer so I would know what was going on with them, I thought.
Okay.
But then after they got ready to testify, then the lawyers was like, oh, I can't talk to you anymore.
I mean, isn't that a conflict of interest just to begin with, though? I mean, how can a lawyer even get paid by someone who he's going up against?
Well, he don't know that his defendant is going to testify for him against me in the beginning.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, at one point when they started to flip.
That's when they
That's when they said.
I can't talk to you anymore.
Okay. So how much money did you spend total in legal fees for everybody?
Each one of those guys' lawyers cost me about 40.
And how many guys?
5, I think, 6 maybe.
So 200, 380. So you spent about $500,000 in
on just fees. That case.
On just that case.
But I always kept my guys out of prison. Okay. Before those guys, that was an indictment where they were trying to put me. But you know, I done had places where they raid the house. You know, a guy driving down the street, he got drugs in the car. So, you know, I also paid for those type of cases as well. But that was a case that I was on. That's what that case called me. So what happened is they finally catch me. I'm in jail. At first, I'm trying to make a deal, you know, because I'm in. When I go through MDC, my case is out of Cincinnati, but when I go through MDC, you know, I'm with some of my old partners from the street who hadn't been selling drugs as long as me, and they talking about, man, they gonna give me life. They gonna give me 40 years. So now I'm ready to take a deal.
Okay.
You know, I want a deal. So. They don't want to make me a deal because I don't want to go to Cincinnati. I'm thinking I'm going to be in worse trouble in Cincinnati than you would be in LA. They make me go back to Cincinnati anyway. So when I get down there, one day I'm sitting in my cell and they tell me to pack my stuff, get ready for court. And I don't have court. So anyway, I get ready to go to court. They take me over and they're like, look, we want to make you a deal. I was like, you want to make me a deal? He's like, yeah, we want to offer you a 10-year deal. I said, I've been trying to take 20. And now y'all want to give me 10? What's the catch? So they said, well, remember the cops that you had filed a claim against, and we think we're going to indict them. I said, huh? He said, yeah, we think about indicting them for money laundering, planting drugs, civil rights violation, beating people up, the whole 9 yards. So they said, if we indict them, will you testify against them? I said, absolutely. Now that I know you're going to indict the cops, that makes your case even weaker. I want a 5-year deal. You give me a 5-year deal if you indict the cops or if you don't indict the cops. But I agree that I will testify against them. So that's how I wind up getting my time cut.
So you testified against the cops?
I did.
And you got 5 years?
I got 5 years.
How involved were the cops at that point in the drug trade? Were some cops just literally partners with the...
Well, they never partnered with me.
Okay.
I didn't need no partners. I picked my own partners.
Okay. But were there cops getting paid off to look the other way?
I don't have a clue. I didn't need them to look the other way. They didn't see me anyway.
Okay.
When they saw me, the first time they saw me, you know what they did?
What's that?
Say, oh, we got 2 kilos of cocaine for you.
What, they try to sell it to you?
No. I didn't need to buy cocaine from the police. I already had my source.
So what do they mean by that?
They said they had 2 kilos of cocaine for me. The cop. Did you see the cop in the dock? You didn't see what he said? He said they would flank you. That's what they called it, flank you. I mean, they would put 2 kilos of cocaine on you and say you had them.
Oh. Okay, so they're trying to plant drugs on you.
They didn't try, they did.
They did?
Yeah, I went to jail for it.
For those 2 kilos?
Yeah.
That they planted on you?
That they planted on me.
I mean, because ultimately, the word of a cop versus a criminal, most people, most juries and judges will side with the cop. A cop's considered an expert witness, whereas a criminal already has, that against them. Baggage. Exactly. Baggage. At the height of you selling cocaine with the Nicaraguans, were you actually going to Nicaragua and everything else like that?
No, I've never been to Nicaragua.
Never. You never wanted to go and meet with
I didn't need to. They asked me.
Oh, they invited you?
Yeah, to Mexico too.
Okay. Now, when you hear of cocaine, you always hear of Pablo Escobar, you hear of Colombia and so forth. Were you dealing with the Colombians at all?
They were.
Oh, the Nicaraguans were. Oh, so that was being done.
I think they were dealing with the Choas, the Escobar, and the Medellin at that time. I think Medellin was another one of the top families.
Did Pablo Escobar never try to reach out to you directly?
No.
He was too big. I mean, I guess like he was moving too much.
I don't know. I probably wouldn't have talked to him anyway.
Okay.
I picked who I wanted to talk to.
You had your connect. It worked for you, and you stuck with your connect all the way through.
I wasn't looking for customers, and I wasn't looking for connects.
Okay. So you go to jail, you come out, you're not dealing cocaine anymore.
Right.
But then Blandone reaches out to you and wants you to do one more deal.
Well, he didn't really want me to do the deal. He wanted me to introduce him to somebody.
Okay.
That would do a deal with him.
I mean, it kind of sounds like the movie Blow a little bit.
Well, all drug deals are almost the same. When somebody's working with DEA, they use the same tactic.
Okay.
It's just I never saw the movie Blow.
You never saw it?
I saw it now, Me and Nick Cassavetes wrote a script together, the guy who wrote Blow, and I also had the opportunity to meet George as well.
Boston George.
Boston George.
Okay. Was that before or after?
When he got out.
Oh, he's out?
Yeah, he's out.
Oh, okay. So if you look at, for example, a Boston George and a Freeway Rick, who was the bigger entity? Just so people can kind of get it in perspective.
I don't know, because I don't really know what Boston George was doing.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know his...
So, but you never had to interact with him? Or
no, I didn't. And I didn't care. Yeah. See, I was going to make my $200,000 every day.
Right.
That's all I cared about.
Okay.
What this guy is doing, none of my business. Why do I need to know his business?
Fair enough.
I want to keep him out of mine.
Okay. So you hook up with Blandone again, and he wanted you to introduce you to someone and so forth, and you eventually do it. And what happens next?
Police, helicopters. It's like a party. Boom. Cars are people heads are popping up out of cars, and it was a setup.
So explain the whole Iran-Contra thing, and what your role in it and what Blandon's role was in it.
Well, my role was that Blandon would bring me drugs to sell to raise money for the Contras. The Contras was backed by the CIA, which was Ronald Reagan and George Bush's pet peeve, George Bush Sr.'s pet peeve. They felt that if they lost Nicaragua, that Russia would be marching down the streets of the United States.
Okay, but where's the Iran part?
Well, they sold guns to Iran and took the money and gave it to the Contras.
But then they were also selling drugs. Well, they're allowing drugs to pass through into America and using that money and putting it to the Contras as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the initial money come from Iran because the Congress had said that they couldn't give the Contras any money. So they had to get it from a source that nobody would know about. I mean, it's so much there. You know, you really got to do your homework. And then, you know, they also had the hostages in Iran that Ronald Reagan was able to get loose because he was going to give them weapons for the hostages along with getting some money.
How much of this did you actually know about?
None. I learned all this while I was in jail.
Okay, so when you were actually selling drugs and so forth, did it seem...
I didn't care about Iran.
Yeah. You didn't care about
none of that stuff.
The Contras in Nicaragua, nothing. You were just selling drugs and making money.
Let's make some money.
All this is happening, and the CIA is actually overlooking this whole process, right?
From what I understand.
From what you understand.
Yeah. I didn't see the CIA doing it, but you know they came back and said, "Yeah, we were watching them. We were helping them."
At a certain point, did you ever think, you know, I'm getting all this cocaine.
No.
And no one's getting busted. And I mean, we're
people were getting busted.
Okay. I mean,
my guys were getting busted.
Were there huge seizures and everything else like that? Like, were you expecting a big package one day and it just never came and there was a drought until the next?
No, we didn't have those issues.
And do you think it was because the CIA was involved?
I don't know. That wasn't my lane.
Okay.
You know, I don't know what Danilo and them had going on.
So you weren't actually involved in the smuggling of it all?
No, not at all.
So
when I got it, it was already here.
Okay. You didn't care how it got over there?
Not at all.
And you weren't, it's not like you would pick up some huge, some huge storage canister with like $1 billion worth. You were getting...
I got mine issued daily.
Daily?
Yeah.
You were never getting a huge, massive amount?
No.
Okay. Is there a reason why they dealt with the risk of daily as opposed to one big monthly haul?
Well, that's what I could pay for. I usually took what I could pay for.
Okay.
I didn't really like credit either.
Okay, so you never actually had credit with these guys?
No, because then, if you take credit from people, then you kind of like work for them.
Right.
Then they can start telling you what to do. And nobody was able to tell me what to do.
Okay.
I did what I wanted to do.
When you hear the horror stories of dealing with these overseas drug, operations where people's entire families would end up dead and, like people would fuck off some money and so forth like that. Did you ever deal with any of that around you? Like, did you ever see that type of stuff happening?
Well, I know. I've known of people getting killed. Somebody come in to rob the place and kill everybody in the house. I've heard of that. And, those streets that it happened on, in L.A. But it's, kidnapping. I mean, a lot of that's part when, you run around the street with $200,000, $300,000, $1 million, and everybody else is making, you figure at that time a good job in LA was like $500,
Yeah.
So it's tempting,
So that deal with Blandon put you right back in prison again.
Yeah.
And at that point, they gave you life?
Life without the possibility of parole.
How did you feel when you went to trial with it?
I went to trial.
I guess you don't plea bargain for life.
They asked me to.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, with a possibility of parole kind of thing?
Yeah. I wanted a 20-year deal. And they offered me a plea where I pled guilty And if the judge wanted to give me 20, she could. But if she wanted to give me life, she could.
You didn't want to risk that.
Nah, I said, nah, I'll take my chance on appeal.
So you went to trial. How much did you spend? I mean, did you
I
have
helped
money?
the jury out, though. The jury stayed out for a day and a half.
Okay.
They thought about letting me go.
Did you have money at this point or no?
A little.
A little bit, but not like before.
No.
Okay.
Money was gone.
The money was gone. Where did the money go?
All kind of places, people grab you in prison, When I got arrested on the first case, they put in there I was going to get life.
So everyone's grabbing everything they can grab.
He don't need it anymore.
Yeah. So you go to trial again.
Yep.
And you lose.
Lose.
Life without the possibility of parole. How did you feel when they read that to you?
Mad, sad, because my mom was there. She broke down in court. A bunch of different feelings,
You end up going to prison. And how did you manage to actually get out of that life sentence?
Well, I taught myself to read and write.
Okay. You were illiterate up to this point.
Yeah, pretty much. I could read a little. I started learning how to read.
Okay.
But I was still, pretty illiterate. But I just started practicing reading every day. Started reading law books. And then one day, I'm sitting there reading, and the words that I needed, continuous criminal spree, popped out. And I was like, oh, wow, that's what I've been reading. On that case, I did 14 in about 8 or 9 months.
This is a rapper out of Chicago whose mom was on crack.
And shit like that in our building, they used to tell me sometimes too, like, your mom, she gonna be all right, man, or, you're gonna be cool, And a lot of people always had respect for my mom because they seen like how she hustled and she a hustler, and how much sense she got, how street smart she is. And to me as a kid, I'm just looking like, shit, in my head, all you niggas is fucking drug dealers. And even though you being nice to me, I don't know if you're not selling this shit to my mom or not, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm not really trying to hear none of that shit, So that's why I had the mentality as a kid of a lot of anger and shit and animosity, as far as to where I felt like, when I get big and get a lot of money, that I'm gonna buy a whole bunch of guns and just kill all the drug dealers,
Kind of like the United States government feel.
Yeah.
That they can just lock up all the drug dealers and the problem will go away. It won't happen.
How much did that bother you at one point to think that there's kids like this all over the country?
Well, really, that's the reason I quit.
Okay.
Because I felt that I was a hypocrite because I didn't want my mom to use drugs. I didn't want my brother to use drugs, but I was selling everybody else's family. And I got away with it because of who I was, because I was so strong and so powerful. And that, like he said, that he was a little kid, he couldn't really do anything about it. Not that I believe what he's saying to do about it is the right thing to do, because that won't help the problem. Drugs is a medical problem. It's not a legal problem. It's not a incarceration problem. You can't lock your way out of it. You can't kill your way out of it, because if he killed all the dope dealers around, his mom is going to create another one. She likes drug dealers. She likes to get high. And we have to start dealing with those issues and not picking out somebody who may be exploiting the situation and say, you know what, you're the cause of this. I always mention my first judge that ever sentenced me, and he told me, he said, Rick, you know what, I don't blame you, even though all these DEA and FBI, all them say you the cause. He said, I don't believe it, because I sentenced my first drug dealer the year you was born. So once you know that, and then you can't go blaming people. What you have to do is help your people. He has to find a way to get through to his mom, to show her love, to show her reasons why she should quit. Because I had people that I had to do the same thing. Even though I sold drugs, I still had people that got hooked on drugs that I had to help get off of drugs.
Right. I remember in the documentary, one of the guys who worked for you ended up having a crack baby.
Yeah.
And this was someone close to you.
Right. But there was people closer than that to me.
Yeah.
I had a kid that was mom was smoking crack when he was born.
Yeah.
So, matter of fact, I saw him the other day, and he was like, "Man, my mom's still getting high, and she's gonna get high because that's what she wants to do." And when somebody wants to do something, you can't stop them until they want to stop.
Crack did have a huge effect, a huge negative effect ultimately, especially on the black community, especially in the
whole country.
The whole country.
We spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars on this war on drugs.
Right. But it seemed like something about crack made it a little bit different than some of the other drugs. Did you feel that's a fair assessment?
Well, they gave crack a stigma so that they could punish young black men 100 times worse than they punished anybody else.
Do you feel that crack was more addictive than cocaine?
It's not.
It's not.
No.
It's just as addictive.
I mean, I saw people who snort cocaine because they had the money all day until their nose started to bleed.
Okay.
I saw people smoke crack until their money run out.
But crack is cheaper.
It's no cheaper.
It's not cheaper.
No. If you got a $25 powder rock, you cook it up, it's going to be a $20 piece of rock cocaine.
Okay, so it's the same thing.
Same thing.
But since crack was more prominent in the black community, they figured out a way to give it harsher sentences.
Ronald Reagan, the news, the police, they all needed a bad guy.
Right.
Who was undesirables? The blacks. The guys we don't need. They're unemployed. They're killing each other. They would see a gang shooting. A guy might have killed the guy with a girl. Or was drug related because he was a gang member. So they took all these things and started to add them up in order to get the support of our black leaders to allow them to pass these laws that the guy who wrote the law, you see him, he's on the documentary, he said the guys are in jail decades.
There was a Vice just recently did a special with Obama actually visiting
I heard about
a federal penitentiary. And Obama said something interesting. He said that no politician has ever lost an election by being too tough on drugs.
Exactly. Well, you know, the guy explains it. They in Congress, and one said, "Oh, we're going to give them 10-1." And others, "Oh, no, 20, no, 30, 40. Let's give them 100-1.
Yeah.
So it was all part of a whole thing, you know, the crack baby stuff. You know, they did a study in Harvard. You go look at the Harvard study. No such thing as a crack baby.
No?
No, crack has no lasting effect. The babies they use in the TV commercials, guess what they were?
What were they?
Alcoholics. The study's at Harvard. You can pull it up. You can go online and pull it up. I had to study all that stuff while I was fighting my case.
Right.
Because, you know, they wanted me to be the author of crack cocaine. So when I go to court, you know, I have to present to them this evidence, Your Honor. Well, Your Honor, you know, there's not crack babies, so you can't come in here talking about I cause crack babies. There really is no such thing.
Are you familiar with BMF?
I heard of BMF.
Black Mafia family. I've hung out with these guys before. They flew me out, and you know, I got to see them in their heyday, and you know, became cool with a couple of the members. And you know, I was at Big Meech's house. You know, at one point, Blue Da Vinci was one of the rappers. We became cool. We've done interviews and everything, but it was very clear from hanging out with them during that time that all this was going to come to an end fairly soon. It was just way too high profile.
Yeah.
And Big Meech, I believe, is doing
32.
30-something years in prison. Right.
Yeah, we used to write and talk. He used to call me.
Okay, so you know Big Meech.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at...
I know Blue, too.
Blue Da Vinci, yeah. Well, when you look at BMF, and you look at what you had going on. Number one, you said that a lot of black gangs didn't really have leadership. I seem to see a certain level of leadership in BMF with Big Meech. Did they kind of break the mold in terms of?
Well, how many people did Meech have?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
10, 15, 20, 30?
Seems about right.
Yeah, when you talk about a Crip gang, you know, you're talking about 30,000.
Right.
A Blood gang, you know, 40, 50,000. So it's a difference. And then, you know, each segment might have its own leader.
Yeah.
So who's the shot caller?
So you're saying that when you look at other gangs, there's actually one person at the top who's commanding the entire operation. And you just don't have that in black gangs from what you've seen.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, when you look at the situation with Meech and you look at BMF, what's your take on it?
I don't really know much about him. You know, I heard a little bit about this story, you know, what happened to him. I met Meech after he got arrested. You know, he started writing me through Miss Day, Wendy Day. Shout out to Wendy Day.
Yeah, shout out to Wendy Day.
She's a friend of yours. And she's definitely a friend of prisoners.
Yeah.
You know, she supplied me with books. One thing, when I met Wendy, I never needed another book. My whole time in jail, I had too many books. When you run an operation like they did, from what I hear, you know, putting up billboards, and I mean, you asking for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like taunting the DEA. And those people take it personal. You know, I just spoke on a panel this weekend at Claremont Lincoln University. And matter of fact, one of the cops that I testified against was on the panel with me. You know, he's also in the documentary as well.
Okay.
As well as another lieutenant, you know, who said, everything I do is ethical. I would never do anything unethical. And the other cop, he talked about how he got turned out, how he started off wanting to be ethical, and then in turn, because of the system was set up in a way that they couldn't have caught me without becoming unethical. Mm-hmm. You know, their normal tactics just wouldn't work. You know, they supposed to send an informant to you and try to buy some drugs. Can't send anybody to me because I don't sell drugs to anybody. Yeah. I already got my crew. I ain't looking for no crew.
Right.
You can tell him to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, far as he's concerned, I don't sell drugs. You're not gonna see me with no money.
Yeah.
You're not gonna see me driving the cars. You're not gonna see me in the big houses. Right. So.
And actually, and I read the book, the BMF book, and they didn't really catch Big Meech with hardly anything. You know.
But that's how they always get the leaders. They don't have to.
Right.
They're gonna tell the jury that you're not gonna see him. He's the leader. You're not gonna see him with anything.
And then the RICO allows them to sort of put some pieces together, and
they draw a picture.
Right, and I believe Big Meech got kingpin charges against him.
I think he had a continuous criminal enterprise.
Yeah. You had a kingpin charge against you also, or?
I had a continuous criminal enterprise in L.A. They dropped that whole indictment because of the sheriffs were their key witnesses.
Okay.
So my worst indictment that could have ever been was out of L.A., which I never got indicted out of L.A. because of the sheriffs getting indicted, kill their witnesses. So they have to go to their second market, which was Cincinnati, Texas, and so forth.
The sheriffs that got indicted were killing their witnesses?
No, they wasn't killing witnesses. I don't think. They tortured them.
Okay.
Planted drugs on them, beat them in the face, all these scars you see in my face, with flashlights and billy clubs, even while they was handcuffed. They also let the dog bite me while I was handcuffed and lying on the floor, face down. So they violated civil rights, and I also won a lawsuit too. They gave me some money for the police doing that to me.
So basically, you think that with BMF, the flashiness is what ultimately?
I mean, the government has too much resource. You know, they're paying informants. Mm-hmm. They can pay. Danilo Blandon got $180,000 for setting us up.
It's not really a lot of money.
It's not, but what if it's a normal kid who's not Danilo Blandon? You tell him, okay, you find me a drug dealer, and I'm gonna give you $180,000. A lot of people will do it.
Yeah.
You know, they got informants that make $5 million from being an informant.
Wow.
You don't know about the top informants in the country? I studied all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got
$5 million.
He's not even the top guy. This is a black informant out of St. Louis. What is his name? I'm gonna do his movie.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to do a movie about him so people can see how. I mean, this guy here, he came to LA and cleaned LA out. Arrested about 10 of my guys.
Were you involved at all with Harry O?
Me and Harry O brother was tight. I knew Harry.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were cellies when I was in jail.
Okay, you guys were locked up together.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever try to go into music? Because, you know, Harry O, allegedly,
I was there when him and Suge met.
So you were there when Harry O and Suge first met?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I was in the room with him and David Kenner. I was in the room with Harry when he told David Kenner that he's going to show him how to make more money in the music business than he ever made as a lawyer. They tried to get me to hire David Kenner.
Really?
Yeah, you know, that was their game. You hire David Kenner, then they get a kickback.
Who is they?
Harry O and a couple other guys in there that was running for David Kenner.
Okay. So you were there when Death Row was essentially founded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sitting at the table.
Why were you at the table?
Long story. We had to do another interview about all that.
Okay. So you were actually there when Suge Knight, Harry O made their initial deal. Met.
I know how they met. I know the whole thing.
Okay.
Harry O was doing an album on Lydia, his wife.
Right.
So me and him cellies, I tell him, I say, look, you doing an album on Lydia, you better use Dr. Dre on that album. You know him and Easy fell out. So he ain't working right now.
Okay.
So Harry took that advice and started looking for Dr. Dre.
And Suge Knight?
And Suge Knight was his manager.
Was Dr. Dre's manager at the
Yeah,
time?
we'll leave it right there.
Okay.
And maybe later on we'll do another interview and talk about it.
Okay. And the rest is history. Did you ever deal with Easy?
I spoke to Easy one time when I was on the street, and I spoke to him one time through Harry O while we were in jail.
Okay. Did you try to get involved in the music industry at all?
I did. I paid for Anita Baker's first album.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I found the Alcoholics.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. Matter of fact, I used to work for SRC Records.
When I left
They used to be Loud Records.
When I left Harry O, they came out with that 187 on the Undercover Cop. So they sent me to Phoenix, Arizona.
Deep Cover.
Huh?
Deep Covers, the name of the song.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and I saw that on TV. I said, damn, Harry O was right, this music business. And then I called my man King T up. I said, man, I'm looking for an artist. And he told me, he said, man, these kids are staying with your cousin right now. It was the Alcoholics. My boy Fade, who was working over at Loud Records, was going to run my label.
So the Alcoholics were your group?
It was supposed to be my group. So I mess up. One of my partners go to the hole. So he called me. I'm going across the yard eating my little ice cream. He called me from the hole. Rick, man, I need you to call my girl. So I walk over to the hole. What's the phone number? You get the phone number. Me and my counselor had already been into it because I told him I wasn't washing no windows and I wasn't raking no rocks. So he said, oh, you out of bounds. Threw me in the hole. While we negotiating the contract, we finna get the contract signed and everything. When I get out the hole, I call Fade. He said, I got good news for you. What's the good news? I signed the Alcoholics to Loud Records.
That was your group?
Puts me in my label, the group to start my label off.
Right, but at that point you were already in jail.
Yeah, I was in jail when I did it. Yeah.
Okay.
But I still had a little bread, you know.
Okay.
All the bread wasn't gone then.
Right.
And I had all the connections, you know. I knew Dick Griffey, Otis Smith, Berry Gordy. The Ghetto Bible, that's what all the dudes on the street is calling it, the Ghetto Bible. If you ain't got one, a bestseller on Amazon, Kindle, Nook, check me out. I'm going to sell 1 million copies independently. I own this. All mine.
All right. Think we're good.